Good evening. I'd like to call the Hebron Board of Education regular meeting of Thursday, October 13th, 2022 to order. The time is 7:02 p.m. Can I have a roll call starting with
Alex Crawford, board member.
Nicole Matthews, board member.
Joe Margaitis, board member.
Alex Schmeisel, secretary.
Heather Pettit, Chair.
John Barrett, superintendent.
Don Briere, Director of Educational Services.
Michael Larkin, principal, Hebron Elementary School.
Thank you. If we could stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. All right. So next on the agenda is discussion and possible action regarding the election of board vice chair. So I would like to now ask for nominations for vice chairperson.
I would like to nominate Allison Schmeisel.
All right, Allison Schmeisel. One moment. Is there a second?
No, second.
Alex seconds. All right, there's a second. Allison Schmeisel. Alex Schmeisel. Do you accept the nomination?
I do.
All right.
Do you want to check for other nominations first?
That happens after she accepts.
Gotcha. Thank you.
So, I've asked 3 times too. Thank you for asking that. Are there any other nominations for vice chairperson? Any other nominations? Any other nominations? All right. So I would ask for a motion to close the nominations.
Make a motion, close the meeting.
Okay. So, Nikki Matthews closes. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, thank you. All right, any discussion? All right, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All right, the nominations are now closed. Are you in favor?
Abstaining.
Okay. Nikki Matthews abstains from closing nominations. Okay.
Wait, from closing? I made the motion, so.
Oh, I thought, oh, sorry. All right, so
Favor
unanimous.
of closing.
All right. So that's, the nominations are now closed. So I will ask, take a roll call on Allison Schmeisel as vice chair. Alex Crawford.
Alex Crawford, board member.
Aye.
Aye. Oh, aye.
Or nay, or
It's yes or
abstain.
no.
This is new.
For Allison Schmeisel as vice chair.
Nicole Matthews, I'm going to abstain.
Okay. Joe Margaitis?
Aye.
You can
Alex
vote.
Schmeisel, aye.
Heather Pettit, aye. Okay. So, congratulations, you are now the new vice chair.
Thank you.
But with that, I would ask, are you going to be now resigning your position as secretary of the board?
Yes.
All right, so I will accept your resignation as secretary. I will give you this new fancy dancy thing.
Oh, wow.
So we do need, by policy and by board, Robert's rules and statute, a secretary of the board. So we didn't have that in the original agenda, so I would ask that we add that to the agenda. So I'd ask for, I will make a motion to add the election of a Board of Education secretary to the agenda. Is there a second?
Second.
All right, Ally Schmeisel seconds. Any discussion?
Heather, do we need to accept her resignation first?
Oh, I did. You can if you want. I did, as chair.
Oh, okay. All right. I wasn't sure if we needed to vote on that or not.
Who was the second?
Ally? No discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All right. All right, so the election of board secretary. The elections are a very intricate process that I do once a year, so usually. All right, so I now ask for nominations for Board of Education secretary. Are there any nominations?
I'd like to nominate Joe Margaitis for secretary.
Okay, Joe Margaitis. Is there a second?
Second.
Nikki Matthews seconds. All right. Joe Margaitis, do you accept that nomination?
I do.
All right, are there any other nominations for Board of Education Secretary? Any other nominations? Any other nominations? All right. I'd ask for a motion to close the nominations. Or I'll make a motion to close the nominations. Is there a second?
Second.
No. All right, Alex. Alex seconds. Discussion, all in favor? Aye. All right. Nominations now closed. Since you were voted unanimously,
Do we have to vote?
we can vote for you. All right, so we'll make a motion to have Joe Margaitis as the board secretary, starting immediately. I'll make the motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Alice Reisel. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. You can vote for yourself.
I abstain.
Okay. Joe Margaitis abstains. Motion passes. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Ally can pass on her.
I don't know where it is, but when I find that, I will give it to you.
Okay.
You
Here.
stole it?
I may have.
Heather, when you made the motion into the roll call for Ally to be the vice chair, you made the motion. Was there a second?
Joe second. Wait.
Joe first, Alex second.
Joe and then Alex?
Yep.
Yes.
I was gonna say, I don't think I made that motion. And then unanimous, Nikki abstained.
Yep.
Oh, not unanimous.
Oh, thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Thank you both. Okay, student liaison report, is there one this evening?
Mr. McKinney?
Do I need to move?
Literally the unluckiest person in the world with this remote.
Hi, I'm Dennis, and this year I'm excited to see my friends and learn more things. My name is Mia, and one of my goals this year is to be a better mathematician. Hi, I'm Michael, and I'm excited to do jazz band this year. Hi, I'm Olivia, and one of my goals this year is to become better at math. Hi, I'm Raisin. I'm ready to learn keyboard. Hi, my name's Avery, and I'm excited to learn. Hi, I'm Sam. I'm excited to learn about piano. Hi, I'm Kat, and I'm excited to participate in jazz band this year.
go over last year's SBAC and NGSS results this evening. Any questions or discussion, happy to have those as well, time at the end as well as throughout. For most of us in the room, I think the first slides will be just a review since last time we did the presentation, and then the backbone of the presentation is the results from last year, and then what are we doing moving forward this year. So the layout for tonight, overview of what SBAC is, what our outcomes look like last year and how that compares from a multi-year lens, and then our action steps, what are we doing this year at Hebron Elementary School to continue achievement for all of our learners. First, quick review, what is Smarter Balanced, the who, the what, and the when. So you'll recall that the Smarter Balanced assessment is for all of our third graders, fourth graders, fifth graders, and sixth graders. It's a computer adaptive test that was new in the state. It's been a number of years now, but that concept was new as a statewide assessment. That effectively means the assessment changes. It becomes more or less challenging based on the way the student performs across the assessment. So every student receives an appropriate measure of their performance. It's an online assessment. It's a statewide mandated assessment. It's summative in nature, and it covers mathematics, reading, English language arts, and we have science results tonight as well to show. SBAC provides achievement and growth information for all of our learners to inform our educational decisions. And there's a CSE is the State Department of Education prescribed testing window, so these assessments happen the last 9 weeks of the school year each year. We like to have this slide in here as well, just to speak to how we can use the outcomes for conversation, but how they don't drive everything we do every day in schools. So state summative assessments are just that. So they have their purpose and their place, but they are certainly not useful as a sole measure of student achievement or program evaluation of the school or the district. SBAC assessments are also not useful as a sole source of guidance for curriculum or instruction, and not a good substitute for a wide variety of other relevant ways that we assess student learning each and every day, including classroom assessments and observations, teacher observations, student work portfolios, universal screen measures, and just ongoing formative progress monitoring in the classroom. Those metrics really inform our day-to-day conversations. Again, just a quick review for those that have seen this before, but just so you know what you're looking at in a moment when we look at the results. The state establishes cut scores across the academic domains. Those cut scores are based on student sampling. And there's 4 levels. So there's the exceeds level is a category of 4, meets achievement level is 3, approaching is a 2, and does not meet the achievement level is a 1. Across the domains of mathematics, English, language arts, and science, we also look to identify knowledge and skills that our learners know, again, at the aggregate summative level. So again, just bear saying, this information should only serve as a baseline for conversation in our ongoing efforts. When you see the data, just again, what the state looks for is students performing at level 3 or above. So level 3 or 4 gets counted as at or above expectation. Okay, so here are the outcomes from last year. First, we'll start broad. So we'll look at just some statewide takeaways from last year's assessment, and then we'll narrow it to Hebron and then go across the grades. So some key takeaways last year from the SBAC and science assessment was that there were some signs of learning acceleration and recovery, which was good news. However, overall achievement still lagged behind pre-pandemic levels. Overall growth rate was faster this past year in elementary grades in particular as compared to middle school and high school levels. And in most grades in mathematics, growth was seen to be the best. Also, the pandemic has had a widespread impact on student achievement. I think we all would have guessed that. That seems to have surfaced as a reality. The performance index changed, and it translated to approximately 6 to 8% decline in proficiency in English language arts, again, statewide, and approximately a 4% decline in mathematics, statewide across all levels of the test administration. So the state has estimated that students in grades 4 and 5 may be 2 to 3 months behind their expected performance, and 5 to 7 months behind in grade 6 in particular. It is estimated that students may be more than a year behind in mathematics statewide. So that is certainly something that's a priority statewide, lenses on that. Again, this is the 10,000-foot view before we dive into our results here in Hebron. So the next few slides look at a new a data dashboard that the state released this year, kind of an interesting analysis, so we wanted to make sure we shared that this evening. Before we go into the actual graph, just how to interpret the graph that you're about to see. So it's a scatter plot. There's a lot of data points on the scatter plot. So it's a statewide performance plot. So this new state report compares overall achievement between SBAC and NGSS is the science assessment, and how that for students has changed from 2018-2019 to 21-22. So it's effectively a pre-post graph. This horizontal x-axis is going to show you the 18-19 achievement levels at the district level across the state, and the vertical y-axis will show you the difference in achievement from 18-19 to this past year. So there's that comparison point. If the difference is greater than 0, that means achievement exceeds pre-pandemic levels. That's what we're aiming for. If the difference is less than 0, achievement lags pre-pandemic levels. So we'll see one of these graphs statewide for each of the academic domains assessed. It's a little tiny, apologies for that, and there's a lot on this. So let me just interpret what this means before we move forward any further. So you'll see that it says target there in the middle. That is a statewide target of achievement that we want for all students across math, reading, and science. That's a target of 75. Each dot there is a different district in the state of Connecticut, okay? So the way you'll interpret this is any of those blue dots that are above that 0 horizontal line, they effectively have exceeded the 18-19 performance levels for achievement. So that's good. All the dots below effectively mean that all those district students have lagged behind pre-pandemic levels, okay? And this is just depicting English language arts, okay?
And the bigger the circle, the more students that are in that district. Like Hartford would have a big circle, we would have a smaller circle.
Right. So that little dot right there is Hebron. And the left-hand side, the call out there, the PI is the performance index. So our performance index in 18-19 was 74.1. Last year was 74.6, showing a slight acceleration in learning, which is something. You know, I think the way I interpret at least this slide and the next two is in comparison to the whole picture, to the whole state. You see the whole statewide trend here, and where do we fall in that, okay? This next graph, same layout of the graph, same overall interpretation. This is for mathematics. So you'll see where all the districts fall on this scatter plot. For us, we were a performance index of 72.8 in 18-19. This past year, we were 70.4, showing a difference or a decline of 2.4 points. Okay.
And we'll talk a little bit later, right? Well, they'll talk a little bit later about why we think our math score may be a little bit of an outlier this year.
Yep. And then finally, science. The data, it's interesting, the data effectively looks somewhat similar for each scatter plot. But here's where we are in Hebron for our science performance with that little tiny dot right above that 0 line horizontally. Again, that vertical target line is a performance index of 75, which is the target the state has for all districts. So here we saw slight acceleration of 0.7 points on the performance index, okay? It's really, and you can find this is just a screenshot of the State Department Ed site website, so all this information would be available to anyone that wanted to go and take a peek.
In that platform, you can turn different districts on or off, like, you know, this has all of them turned on, and we sort of turned all of them off except for us to find where we were. But it's kind of interesting to kind of poke around it.
Oh, sorry, went a little too fast there, going backwards.
Okay, go back if you want to go forward.
Oh.
There you go.
Mr. McKinney's playing a joke on me, the clickers, buttons. So Hebron takeaways here from those initial data. Overall reading and mathematics remain stable, so we're talking about across all of our grades. And we think, and we believe, one of the reasons for that is that our tutoring support that we used, that we implemented, aided in an additional 56 students last year receiving supplementary support in reading and math across our buildings. Some other just key takeaways here. Grade 3 performed well in reading and mathematics. We took that away for conversation. Grant funding was used proactively to allow for smaller class sizes when we had reopened last year, and also tutoring support was, of course, provided in 3rd grade as well. So certainly we're contributing factors, we believe, to the achievement in grade 3. Grade 6, We noted a decline in ELA performance. However, you'll notice, and I'll show you this information in a second, math demonstrated a cohort growth. So as you track students cohort to cohort, grade to grade, same students getting compared to themselves, that did show growth, which was positive. We are implementing in 6th grade a new math curriculum and increasing instructional coaching and professional development in 6th grade. Also, we think a key variable to the outcomes in 6th grade, and we're excited to see where this takes us, are some of the structural changes, which have maximized direct instruction time, which should translate, in theory, to higher achievement and performance in the long run. And then one final takeaway for science, there were overall significant improvements in performance, 10 points, which was a 22% jump from our last comparison point, so that certainly was a big celebration for us. Okay. The next few slides look at our DIRG comparison. So DIRG stands for District Reference Group. That's effectively a list of 26 other districts that have similar demographics as us. So we use this cohort of 27 as our comparison points. And if you've seen this presentation before, you've seen what this looks like. So the first slide is where do we compare when we're looking at all students across all grades for mathematics and ELA. We did throw in on the very right-hand side here of the bar graph the state, just so you can see the state comparison point. So as a state in mathematics, we have 40% of students at or above proficiency, and in ELA it's 49. You'll see for the DIRG bars there and the Hebron bars for mathematics and ELA, we are right in the 60s across both domains, and you'll also note there effectively right on par with our DIRG counterparts. Again, there's a state target of 75. This is the rank order. So if you're wondering how do we square up against the other 26 comparable districts, in ELA this past year we ranked 11th out of 27, and in mathematics we ranked 12th out of 27. If you're wondering how does that compare to previous years, in 2019 for ELA we were 18th. In 2019 we were 9th for mathematics. And in 2021, we were 9th in ELA, and we were 5th in mathematics. This next slide shows the cohort growth. So you'll see the similar colors going horizontally down the graphic there, and you'll see in 2020 there was no testing, so we accounted for that as well. The way you interpret this is if you're looking at the same group of students from one year and one test administration to the next, is useful information, because you can see did that same group of learners achieve at a higher level than they had as compared to the previous test administration. So all those, I'll look at 2017, for example, as a point of reference. You'll see the third graders that year, 69% were at or above proficiency. The following year when they were tested in 4th grade, that next red number, it dropped to 61, then jumped up to 71, so on and so forth. So it's an interesting graphic to look at. You can look at performance from one cohort to the next across years for ELA on your left-hand side and for mathematics on your right-hand side. The next few slides are going to focus just on that final column of 2022. How did we do grade level by grade level? Because up to this point, we've only been looking at district-wide performance. Okay. So for ELA, literacy, across each grade, you'll see where we achieved within the category of 3 or 4. Recall the green and the blue are where we want to be. So in 3rd grade, we have 66% of students at or above expected levels, 69.48% in 4th grade, 72% in 5th grade, and 58% in 6th grade. And for mathematics, you'll see the same breakdown there of the data from this past year. Then we'll pivot and transition to the science outcomes. So science results you'll see here, there haven't been as many years for comparison purposes here. So science is only assessed in 5th grade. That's why you only see 5th grade there. There's an asterisk next to 2021 because 9 of our students were tested remotely that year. So you just need to bear that in mind when you're looking at this data. In 2021, 62% of students were at or above expected levels in science. And again, a celebration for us is, this past year we had 71% of students at or above expected levels. So the bottom graphic there just demonstrates that same information in a different way. If you're wondering about our DERG rank order for science, we are 10th out of 21 districts. The reason there's not 27 for science is because those districts on the very right-hand side there below the asterisk are too small. Their sample size is too small in 5th grade for the state to run and provide those outcomes.
Okay, so this last slide is the so what slide. What are we going to do about this information, or what are we going to do with this information? And just before we talk about some of these things, I think it's important to keep in mind that this assessment is one snapshot in time, and it's one part of a student's much larger assessment portfolio. So this is divided into some different parts for organization purposes here. So the first part under data, we are conducting bi-weekly student achievement team meetings, we call them, which are focused solely on the review and analysis of data and then instructional decision-making as a result of that data. So those are facilitated by our curriculum specialist, and each grade level team meets every other week for 45 minutes on that task. And what's the trick here, Dr. Greer?
We have extra animations embedded, so there
Yeah, okay. Also under data, we are piloting in grade 4 the use of the new data platform ION. That is sort of a one-stop shop for all students' data information, where teachers are able to go and get a very comprehensive portrait of the student's assessment portfolio from ION. Well, we look forward to starting to use that actually next week when we have our first SRBI meetings next week. And then ongoing progress monitoring of students who are receiving those tiered supports.
The right one. Yeah.
There we go. Under the category of systems, full implementation of targeted supports. So this is our SRBI system of interventions for students. We are fully implementing that with students receiving both Tier 2 and Tier 3 interventions in the area of math and ELA. Some students are identified for those interventions based partly on their performance on the SBAC. We also have decided to hire an additional tutor this year with some grant funding that is available to us. So we have one tutor who is working solely on providing tutoring support in reading, and we have a second tutor who now will provide tutoring support in math. Both of those people work under the direction of our either reading specialist or math specialist and our curriculum specialist. We revised the grade 6 structure, and while we're still dealing with the same number of minutes in a day, we gained some instructional time by revising the grade 6 structure because we've eliminated some of the transitions across the day. So the students are not transitioning to a different teacher, which cuts into the amount of time that's available for instruction. They're with their classroom teacher for the bulk of the day. It also provides us with opportunities for integration that we did not have before. We are fully implementing the Bridges program, including Number Corner in grades 3 through 5. Number Corner is an essential component of the overall Bridges program. It's essential because some concepts are introduced in Number Corner that are then taught in subsequent lessons. So it's important that students have had that introduction in Number Corner, and we're fully implementing Number Corner. It's outside of the math block, so it's a different time of the day. It's an additional 20 minutes of instruction outside of the math block. Bridges is used in grades 3 through 5. Illustrative math, we're in our second year of implementing illustrative math in grade 6. One of the reasons why illustrative math was chosen is because of its close correlation with Bridges. We're also continuing our affiliation with Teachers College. We had our first visit with our staff developer this past week. Part of the power in that is the embedded professional development that exists. And we're monitoring closely our pacing in our units of study in both ELA and math. One of our theories about pandemic recovery has been that it impacted our pacing because we slowed down so that we could fill in some gaps with some of the students. That was the right instructional decision to make at the time that it was made by the teachers. We're now looking at the impact that slowing down had because it didn't allow us to get through as much content as we previously had. So we're now having conversations about ensuring that we're focusing on priority standards That's one of the student achievement meeting conversations, making sure we're focusing on priority standards so that we're getting through enough content before the students take the test. We want to make sure that's not the first time they're seeing anything, certainly. So that is our action plan.
Mr. Larkin, could you talk a little bit, so we saw some, like a dip in math performance, but it was an issue in the implementation of the assessment. Can you talk about that?
There was a lesson learned in the implementation of the assessment in one of our grades. In one of our grades, the SBAC math assessment was administered entirely by substitutes because of some extenuating circumstances. And we saw an impact from it being administered by substitutes. So we will not do that again. Students perform better when they have their classroom teacher present, and we know that, and so we would not administer it that way. Again, we would postpone the test if need be, so that we can make sure that we have the classroom teacher present when we're administering the test. We also are in math, because we, again, this is one snapshot in time, but we are noticing that there's certainly a difference in our students' performance between ELA and math. We're trying to replicate some of the good practices that we have in place in ELA with math. For example, we spend time in ELA with teacher teams working together, planning units of study together, going into each other's classrooms, teaching lessons together, debriefing about those lessons. That's a process that we learned from our Teachers College staff developer that has been firmly in place now. We're going to take that practice and apply it to math now. We haven't done that before, but under the direction of our math specialist and our curriculum specialist, we're going to do that same thing. We're calling them math collaborative days. So we're going to do that same kind of professional learning with teachers in math as we've done in English language arts.
Yeah, one thing I think we noticed, or we talked a lot about, it's a highlight for us here, is how well third grade performed. Our first graders, when we shut down, we were very concerned about them. We utilized some grant funding with your support to give them smaller class sizes when they were in the second grade. A lot of targeted supports, and what we saw was that our third grade performance was pretty strong, in looking at the historical performance of third grade. So I think that's a huge celebration. I think our newest cohort of concern, I was just talking to Mrs. Oriano, can't get completely off here with this presentation. A cohort that we're concerned about is now our current first graders. They're performing, if you remember, back in June, we were really concerned about some of the kindergarten data. That was the group that was probably most impacted by a lack of preschool experience during the pandemic. So we're definitely seeing support, kind of in a negative way, by some concerns and data we're seeing that really speaks to the importance of preschool, which I know this board is very committed to that concept. But that, I think right now would be our, from a K-6 perspective, I think the grade level right now of most concern is our current first graders. I know you're not reflected in this assessment, but just some conversations that we were having earlier this morning.
Did the state adjust its target post-COVID? Do you find that frustrating?
I kind of think the target is irrelevant, to be honest. I mean, we want our students to do the best that they can possibly do. So whether or not the state sets a target at 75 or not, I think is kind of irrelevant. We don't really talk about it very much.
I just find it probably counterproductive for the educators to chase a goal that's somewhat unattainable when you're talking, realistically.
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing that is frustrating, maybe more so, is that this assessment is a really challenging assessment. So I think sometimes when you see the numbers and you think like, oh, 64%, meet benchmark, it's a really difficult assessment. And I've done an exercise before where when SBAC was just sort of first out of the gate, we gave parents and board members questions, and we said, like, what grade level do you think that these might belong to? And I think people were really surprised at how sophisticated the questions are at the different grade levels. So, this is one assessment. We do the presentation in June with some of our local assessments, and we just have to take it all in perspective.
When was so for this chart right here, when was the last time we met the target, the state target? And then how many districts meet the state target?
The state target of 75.
Yeah. Like, is that a common occurrence, or?
If you look at the scatter graph, it actually, you can sort of tell because the vertical axis in the middle, that is the state target. So you can sort of see that, like, for ELA, we're really, really close to the state target.
Yeah.
I think this is the highest we performed in ELA, if I'm remembering correctly. And so no, I don't think that we've actually hit the target, but we're very close to it. So any districts that are on the right-hand side of that vertical axis,
Right.
they're either at or meeting the state target. And not surprisingly, the demographics in those communities are quite affluent for the most part. And so you can see the same thing in mathematics. So as a state, we perform better in ELA than math, which you will talk about the reading legislation later. So it sort of begs the question why we're so focused on ELA right now, but Connecticut does not perform as well nationally in mathematics.
I got a question. So I remember from last year, Regional School District 12 and 18, I think they were also consistent top performers then as well. Do we know if they're doing anything different that's making them consistently be at the top?
I personally, Tom might, yeah.
I can't speak specifically for RSD 12. I mean, we're talking to our colleagues all the time. You know, we don't have the numbers here, but like with the ranking, what's interesting is like we're often separated by very small numbers. So while we may be 11th in ELA, we may only be like 0.4 down from Salem. Like we're a very packed in DIRG, so you don't see a lot of variation. I mean, on the extremes there may be more variation, but for those of us in the middle, there's a lot of movement from year to year. Because 0.2, 0.3 can really shuffle the deck in terms of like where your ranking is.
Do we know how those districts do further up the chain?
I mean, like
As far as,
high school level?
yeah, 'cause I know Regional 12, that's Chappaqua, Washington, Roxbury.
That's not something that we've spent time looking into.
I just wonder if it's worth reaching out to the superintendents, just to see if they're doing anything different. 'Cause
Yeah.
I like, I like the action plan, looks good, I just, I'm curious, does that help get us up to that level, or if there is anything we can learn from them?
Yeah, I mean, certainly, you see Mansfield is close by here, Marlboro as well. I mean, we're in more conversations with the ones that are more local, but that's something we could think about. I think the state has more structures for districts that are more geographically, close by, for us to be collaborating. Reading is an interesting one. There's a lot of statewide conversations right now around like what we're doing around literacy. And whether or not the state really supports what some of these top performers are doing or not.
So I just want to say thank you very much for this data and for presenting it, and for having an action plan. So I am thankful that, well, I know we went down a little bit in math from the time pre-COVID to now, and went up in ELA, so I'm happy to see that. But so 2 questions, because obviously our math still needs, our kids still need some help with math. How much tutoring? Is it a full-time tutor?
No, all of our tutors are part-time.
So working with just a certain tier of kids or all kids?
The students that are identified.
Okay. Which could be number-wise.
Well, there were 56 last year. I don't have the
Okay.
number for this year off the top of my head. It's similar.
So my other question is 6th grade. I'm sorry to say this, but, right? So if I look at ELA in 6th grade, in math in 6th grade, they're in 52, 58. So I don't know if, so my question is, what's happening in 6th grade? I'm sorry, but I'm just wondering, like, is there something, I know that we changed the structure this year, so maybe that was helpful, and maybe part of that is a transition. Do you think that that's the main reason why? I mean, 6th grade across the board is lower than testing-wise than other grades.
I think there are a variety of reasons. I think one of them has been time. I think one of them is classroom community and connectedness. And so that is why we changed the structure.
And do you think any of the math part had to do with illustrative, like going to the new math curriculum or testing it, or, I know that obviously it's, you know, a very well thought out research curriculum and it should be great, but I'm wondering, like, it takes time, right, for teachers to learn a new curriculum, for it to be implemented, like, to the best of its ability, so I don't know if you thought that might be some of that.
Our
as well.
theory is that that's more indicative of the pacing, because
Mm.
teachers were learning a new program and we were slowed down anyway because we were filling in gaps we didn't get through the same amount of content that we would have liked to have gotten through before administering the SBAC.
Okay. Thank you. I don't know if anyone else had any other.
Yeah, just, so just in terms of any of the pieces of this that might be keeping anybody up at night, I'm wondering, like, is there anything we can do to help? What can we do? What do you need from us as a board? And that may not need to be answered specifically tonight, but I just want to throw that question out there so that, you know, we're open about it and we can talk about it.
I think the biggest thing is that there's gonna be some budgetary items that are tied to this, you know, I think that there will be a need, we haven't really begun developing next year's budget yet, but we will be in the next month. You know, the grant funding is gonna be running out that supports the tutoring program, certainly not the kind of funds that we've had. We will have small amounts of Title I funding, but that is a fraction of how much money we've had for the tutoring program. So that's something for the board to be considering, and that's something that's been on our weekly cabinet agenda that we continue to discuss. There's gonna be programming materials, so updated reading materials are gonna be needed. Forget about the legislation that we'll talk about later. We have a need for updated literacy materials besides that. We know that our math program, which is, you know, if you're, as far as math programs go, we've got one of the best. I wouldn't rank any of the best over one another. So we have a very solid, good math program. But they're going to be updating their materials over the next 2 years too. It's just time for them to put out updated materials. So there'll be expense over the next 3 to 4 years, certainly for literacy and math. And not to, I mean, the board's been supportive for materials for social studies and science in the past too. It's just reading, ELA, math materials are just far more expensive because of the sheer volume that you're purchasing. It's just a lot more materials than when you're purchasing, you know, some updated social studies things. Just think about the instructional minutes of the day at the elementary level for these content areas. So there will be some significant expenses for those kinds of things coming up. Yeah.
Thank you. Any other questions? Thank you both very much.
just
Oh,
to-
sorry.
Piggyback what Ally was saying, is there anything you think you need besides the instructional material, anything else that the board could help with? I mean, we do want to know this because it's important to me, I think.
We want to help. Yeah,
You know,
it's
I
okay.
really want to get to where
Yeah.
12 and 18 are. I appreciate that we're looking at local and we're looking at Mansfield and that's great, but, you know, if there's something that's going to help get us up to be a top tier district, you don't have to answer now, but just,
Let us know.
We
yeah,
want to know.
we'd really like to know.
I'll need to think about that.
Good.
Yeah, yeah.
And to be clear too, like, you know, we
Mrs.
put up.
Ariano as well.
We're putting up the DIRG, the DIRG references, but we also look beyond DIRG C. You know, and we look at DIRG A, we look at DIRG B, we look at where are we on the scattergram and who's like a little bit further beyond where we are, who's a lot further beyond where we are. I mean, I think that there are demographic realities that when you look at the top performing districts, like the resources that those families have, that
Right.
they're doing above and beyond what the school district can do, and what they're doing before kids even enter school is not something that we necessarily have a lot of control over. So that accounts certainly for some of the differences. You know, off the top of my head, do I think that we could use more school-based administrative support in terms of supervision and evaluation for certified and non-certified staff? Do I think that that would make a difference? I certainly do. So I mean, I think that that's something we could also talk about during budget time. You know, most of DIRG C are similar districts to us in terms of like size. We have similar demographics probably to a lot of DIRG B districts too, but they're K-12 and, a K-12 district just has different levels of teaching and learning resources that we will never have. Like, we're never going to have a world language director. Like that just would never make sense for us. And would that make a difference in our world language program? Certainly would. So, I think there are things that we can do and that we're looking at. I think it's a really interesting question. So I'm sure that we'll be giving it a lot of thought and talking more about it during budget season. But I also think just your overall support of the school, which I know is there, and support of the work that we're doing and the next steps and the action steps that we're undertaking, because a lot of these are long-term commitments that you're not going to see a quick bump up. The things that we're doing in 6th grade, there will be some level of implementation dip that just occurs with that. The new math program, could talk about it in 5 years when it's been in place for 7. We can, the structural changes, we have teachers who have not taught math in years teaching math this year, and same for ELA. So that's gonna take some time to see the impact of these changes. So sticking with it and, getting better at what we're doing and not doing a quick change or pivot because it feels like that would be a faster way to go. I think we're making a lot of long-term commitments with our decisions, so we have to see it out.
Yeah, I completely, I'm sure this is where Allison was going as well, but, we fully support you completely as far as getting us up there. And I would say, better than I, but I would say, we want to target the top of Durg C to see what they're doing. It is going to be a long-term play, right? We can't expect change overnight, but, we're here for the kids that are going to be going into pre-K, and, what can we offer kids going into pre-K that are going to help this, and, going into kindergarten and just building up, because you're talking about the concerns right now in 1st grade, and, I would share those concerns because we're not going to likely see results quickly on that, but we'll be talking in a few years about, hey, we saw their change by the time they hit 5th and 6th grade.
And the other thing too, is not, I think that we don't talk about it enough, but our commitment to a small class size. Our class sizes are not ridiculously small, but they're very reasonable. And so we're asking teachers to do really hard things. And so if they're doing that with class sizes of 16 versus 25, that's really different. The kind of sophisticated data work that we're asking teachers to do to plan for small group instruction, doing it with 16 is really different than doing it with 24. So I think that's something for us to continue to really target.
Yeah, we need to stay committed to that.
I agree. And resources, budget, it does make a difference.
Yeah.
Yep.
I mean, you have a lot of districts that spend a lot of money, more money, and I'm not saying Hebron's very supportive of our community is very supportive of our education, but I'm just saying there's bigger districts, so there's more resources available, like Dr. Baird said. I think there's a lot of directors and different of all, some schools have them of every subject. So, it definitely makes a difference as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, public comment. I'll read this, even though I don't know if the principals want to make a public comment. Do either of you would like to make a public comment? All right, then I'm going to skip this paragraph just for this evening because nobody else from the public is here. The approval of minutes, I will make a motion to approve the regular meeting minutes of September 15, 2022 as presented. Is there a second?
Second.
All right,
I'll second it.
Alex seconds. Is there any discussion? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstention? Motion passes. Resource management meeting, there was not a quorum, so I just asked the chair, Chair Margaitis, do you accept the minutes as presented?
I do.
All right, thank you. All right, and Dr. Baird, superintendent's report.
All right, I will attempt to be brief with no promises tonight. So our first round of academic and social emotional health universal screening assessments is ongoing. We're utilizing these assessments to implement our individual small group intervention for reading, math, and social emotional health. That'll be ongoing throughout the year. We've talked a lot about the tutors this year, and Mr. Larkin already shared, we did hire a second one. I just saw her picking up her badge today, so a familiar face will be coming back to work with kids at HES. We had our first Innovation Advisory Council meeting. Mr. Margaitis was there as well, September 23rd at the Hebron Elementary School Makerspace. Our next meeting is going to be in December. We're going to be at RAM, where we're going to be looking at their historical work of the student achievement rubrics and their student work portfolios. And as you know, in the district advancement plan, that's work that we are looking to see how are we going to measure our mission and vision across the 4 districts. We've hired our Gilead Spanish teacher to expand Spanish instruction in grade 1. I saw her today, so she is here and she is teaching. So exciting. I know that's a big move for us. COVID operations, not a lot to report here. We have our annual flu vaccine clinic happening at Gilead. Mrs. Uriano, I think it's still October 19th. I know there was some maybe hope of a date change, but looks like we're sticking to the 19th. So that'll be here. It's open to the public. No appointment necessary. Chatham Health has got a lot of clinics going on in the region, so you can check out their website for more information. And then some other items of interest. The Board of Finance continues to discuss our need for access to our non-lapsing account. I know Chair Pettit is going to talk about that in a minute. Our 23-24 district calendar development meeting is going to be next Tuesday at 3:30 via Zoom. And then it'll be for the board to consider adopting that calendar at the November regular meeting is typically when the board adopts the calendar. I know that Ally and Heather plan to join that meeting. And the draft is out to the people that had volunteered for that. We held our first District Safety and Security and Safe School Climate Committee meeting. I know Nikki and Ally were at that meeting on September 27th, and we reviewed our updated security plan. We're close to submitting that well before the deadline, but we need one more signature that we're still chasing. And we discussed training goals and our training plans for the year at that meeting. And then I wanted to spend some time talking about the right to read legislation and the impact that that's having across the state, but also how that's playing out locally. So I typed up some talking points for myself to keep me structured here, so bear with me. But the right to read legislation was passed in 2001 and requires districts to use specific literacy assessments and curriculum. The legislation infringes on local districts and Board of Education's authority and the curriculum program adoption process, which does exist under current state law as well. In my view, I think the legislation conflicts with that state law. I think it's going to be interesting to see how those two state laws can sort of work in conjunction, because I see them as being opposed. To me, this is a slippery slope towards statewide curriculum program mandates, and I don't think it's going to end just in K-3 literacy. So that's one reason why this was bad legislation in my view. There are 2 ways to create curriculum. You can adopt a full comprehensive commercial program, or you can author a local curriculum that uses instructional materials from a variety of programs along with self-authored materials to create your own local comprehensive approach to that content area. I equate it similar to you can go to the grocery store and buy a box of blueberry muffin mix and make the box blueberry muffins. Or you can go out and pick blueberries and use different ingredients to create your own recipe. And I think we can think about which one might taste better for you, and think about which approach might be better for kids in districts that can pull it off. Big box programs usually work better in districts that have less teaching and learning resources and have more significant teacher turnover. The approach that we use, authoring our own curriculum, uses those best pieces of multiple resources to create an overall curriculum experience. The only reading programs approved by CSDE, the Connecticut Department of Ed, were comprehensive commercial programs, And in keeping with the right to read, that's in keeping with the right to read legislation. A flaw in the approach the department had, but was still in keeping with the legislation, is that it only looked at programs that could meet all of the requirements of the science of reading. Any of the programs that most of Connecticut uses, like how we do, where we pick different pieces, just would not be in keeping with the legislation to even be considered. Across the state, a survey was done, and only 12 out of 122 that completed the survey were using any of the programs that were approved by the department. Locally, we've seen our literacy outcomes increase since moving to the Teachers College Reading and Writing Project with embedded professional development, along with supplements to the program. We do need updated reading units of study K through 3. The TC is authored. They're not out quite yet, but that is some of the materials I was talking about. We know that we need some updated materials to align with updated research. We've added supplements to TC in response to updated reading research over the last couple of years. The science of reading focuses on oral language, phonological awareness, phonics, fluency, vocabulary, rapid automatic name letter fluency, and reading comprehension. The science of reading is an updated take on what we really were thinking about in terms of balanced literacy. Balanced literacy was really the term that you were hearing up until a couple of years ago. Steps we've taken since the release of the programs has been that I requested research that was submitted by each of the approved programs that was submitted to the Connecticut Department of Ed. This was referred to their legal director as an FOI request. This is in stark contrast to the ease of communication that I personally have had with the Teaching and Learning Department in the past. We're reviewing materials, we're looking at what was approved to see what aspects could be better than things that we're currently using. So we're not blindly just saying TC is it and we're not gonna make any kind of moves. We are looking at what has been approved with caution. And we are really committed to continue with our local curriculum approach that's produced positive results in the past. So we're not ready to deviate yet. While we can pursue a waiver from the commissioner, it's a lengthy process that is not likely to be approved, and that's in keeping with the legislation. We reached out to lawmakers to seek a repeal or significant change to the legislation. We've already seen some shifts in how the waiver process may be updated to accommodate our type of curriculum approach. And then just to be really clear, the right to read legislation has been attempted in other states, Colorado, Florida, Mississippi, alphabetical order, and nationally known as Reading First, and they have widely been viewed as failures. Locally, our scores are headed in the right direction, and we're committed to the integrity of our philosophy while making adjustments in reflection to the updated research in the area of teaching and learning. One of the things that I learned working in priority district and alliance districts that have more state oversight is a flaw of that oversight and prescribed directives, either prescribed in legislation or from the department, from themselves, is that they are slow to move towards updates. So, for example, if we look at the programs that were approved, one of the ones that was approved is planning to launch an updated version of their program in another year or so. Under the legislation, you wouldn't be able to use the updated version of that program. You have to buy the program that was reviewed. And so they're not planning on reviewing any additional programs for another 5 to 7 years. So we have a list that we can use up until 2027. So anything that gets updated in the meantime won't be reviewed. At least that's what they said at a meeting a week or two ago. And I saw this firsthand, working in Norwich. We had to submit reading assessment data. We were limited to what assessments were on a prescribed list that they would disseminate. And we had wanted to move to a more updated version. It was a good assessment, but it was outdated. There was 2 versions upgraded from that assessment that we wanted to move towards. And we were told, nope, not until the state literacy committee would convene to review updated versions of those assessments. We could not use the updated version. So that's a flaw here in this process too, is that the department is just not known to move quickly to updated materials that are out there. And like I said before, TC is putting out new units of study. There certainly are changes that we see in the science of reading research that would really prescribe updates to some units of study that we have. And so we hope to see that reflected in the updated TC units when they're released. So we're cautiously optimistic that we'll see that. That'll be, I think, a good indication to the extent that TC is embracing the new research around literacy. But we need to wait. We need to see what those programs look like, or what those units of study look like. But CSD is not going to review them. They're not going to review them because they're not going to review new things, and they're not going to review them because TC readily admits that they are not a comprehensive program. They are a component of what would be your literacy program. So that's a snapshot of kind of where we are. We're reviewing some of those programs that have been released. We know we have material needs. We knew that before the legislation. We're not blind to reviewing the research when it's put out. I think that for all the reasons I've described, the legislation is terribly misguided. I did reach out to 5 lawmakers when the original legislation was proposed, 2 state senators and 3 state reps, the ones that represent Hebron and ones that represent where I live or very close by that I know. And out of those 5, only 1 committed to voting against the legislation. That was Robin Green, and she did vote against it. Everyone else voted for it. And like I said, I've reached out in my own personal capacity, not as your superintendent, to my local reps that I know, because there's an election going on and people are distracted by that. So it's not really the right time to do a lot of outreach. And we know we're going to see at least a change in the state rep for Hebron, just because we don't have an incumbent running for re-election. So waiting until that election happens. The timelines are not realistic. That's probably the biggest problem right now, is that we theoretically need to adopt and implement a new reading program, as does most of the state, for the next school year. That is an impossible expectation just from a funding, a planning, professional development planning perspective. These companies are not going to be able to support the number of districts that would be adopting programs. And I don't see any program on the list that would be a program that we would adopt full tilt. I could see aspects of programs that are on the list that we would maybe adopt portions of, but not any that we would say, oh yes, this is our entire reading program. I could see districts where it would make sense, but we're not one of them. I'm happy to answer any questions
I
you
just
might have.
wanted you to,
Yeah.
also, they wanted the districts to let them know by December, of, like in 2 months, what program they're gonna use,
Oh, come on.
which is very unrealistic. I
Completely.
mean, in 2 months, you're not gonna be able to review programs and figure out, budgetarily, we don't even, the whole thing is,
So
unless, the state would like to give every district $200,000. Which I doubt.
I have a couple questions, if that's all right. So, did you say implementation by next school year?
Next school year.
And dare I ask, how will they know? So how do they know?
So the first step is superintendents in December are supposed to respond to a survey where we put our commitment to which program we've selected. You have the option of selecting, we don't have the funds to adopt a new program and we need a 1-year extension. My understanding is that they're then going to request some type of proof that we don't have the funds, which would be difficult for us to argue, especially because we have a non-lapsing account.
That we need for special ed.
Right, but superintendents are essentially saying to each other and to our state organization, why do I have to tell you in December? That's not what the legislation says, to my knowledge. And I don't, what if I don't know? Which I think would be the answer of pretty much everybody, so.
So I think I will say my concern is if we don't, if the legislation doesn't change, which my hope is that it will, and we
Yeah.
have a session coming up, right? So it can definitely be either repealed or revised. But if it isn't, and we don't implement one of these programs, and somebody says, my child doesn't do well in reading,
Yeah.
then there's a liability there.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of not great things
Yeah.
about what happened.
There's a lot of legal questions, the one that you just brought up for sure. The other questions, so I've requested CAPS do a legal analysis on behalf of all the superintendents in two issues. One, so with some state laws, there's a clear, like, if you don't do this, the consequence is this. So like, is there any kind of indication of what the consequence is? It's still state law, it's a mandate, so we also can't frequently disregard state mandate. So there's that question. I still think there's a very interesting legal argument to be made that there's state law that says Board of Eds have control over what curriculum is adopted in their district, or they can delegate that. Your policy delegates that, but it's still a local district decision under state law. I think the argument here is, well, we're not telling you which one, we're just saying you can only pick from this list. So I think that that's the sort of nuanced argument that's going on. There are certainly districts that are taking an approach of saying, we're just choosing respectfully to ignore you. Like, I'm not filling out any survey, we get great results. Joe, to your point before, what are some of these top tier districts doing? Top tier districts are doing what we're doing, and we're getting good results with that. Our literacy scores are on the rise since adopting TC. Westport, Darien, Simsbury, Glastonbury, these are all districts that use TC and, like us, supplement it because we know it's not a complete program. So the jury's out. I do think, my prediction will be the legislation will be updated to at least delay for a year or two, because it's not a realistic time frame. It means that, like, we're rushing in our review. I think there's one of the programs that shows some more promise. Can we have some teachers look at some of those materials and try some of them out? That's a tall order in the next month and a half, but this is basically taking up all of our time right now because it's just such a pressing issue. And I don't think it's right to ignore it either, because there are updates in the research that we need to move on. But the pace at which we'd be making a decision, I think, is rushed.
I don't know how they would have a question, I'm just saying this out loud. I don't expect an answer, but I just don't understand how CSD would have a question on a survey. Do you think you're not gonna be able to have a funding? How does a Board of Education that has to go through a Board of Finance and a
Correct.
referendum able to say yes or no, we're gonna have a funding before May or June?
I don't know the answer to that, and I don't know how to.
I know,
put-
I'm just-
yeah.
I'm just-
And I don't know how to, I think when we're creating the budget right now, we're gonna be looking at, our default would be, we believe in TC, we get good results with TC, we know that we need the updated units of study, we should budget for those updated units of study because that's our best guess. And that's what a budget is. It's a guess. It's an educated guess of what our expenses are gonna be. But we're not ready to fully commit to those units of study until we see them and see that they've really been updated to reflect the research. I think that they will. I think that everything we're hearing from TC is that they recognize that they needed to pivot, and they're going to. So I'm hopeful. But we will likely need some other materials to balance it out.
Well, unfortunately for the board, and I don't remember if it's a short or long session, I don't know if
Long.
anyone else
It's a
here
long
does,
session.
is a long session this year. So, I don't know by February 15th, and we have to certify our budget to the town, if
Right.
we're gonna even know if
Right.
this is going to stand,
Yeah.
Yep.
That's true.
Anyway, just my thoughts out loud.
To be continued.
Thank you.
That concludes my report.
Thank you. All right, so business manager's report. So as we all know, Miss O'Leary, I'm saying that for this evening,
Yeah.
is getting married. So she is not with us this evening. She did include her report. and other materials, monthly budget materials, I can ask Dr. Baird to pinch hit if you have any questions. Otherwise, you can email her, or we can wait till next meeting, or, I'm happy to do that. If anyone has any questions, let us know. Otherwise, I will say congratulations, or to when she comes back and I want pictures, but. Good to go on? All right. All right, so the chair's report. So the town has reached out in regard to the joint meeting that by charter, we have to attend every year, prior to November 1st. So this meeting is really to discuss goals and objectives, ironically, of the upcoming budget season. So I would ask that the board, if you are available, it's going to be a go-to meeting, so it's going to be a virtual meeting, if you could attend. I think, obviously we haven't met on the budget yet. Dr. Baird and Ms. O'Leary probably just beginning to formulate their Dr. Baird's recommended budget. So I think the only thing that I do know is that the board would like to, so these are things we voted unanimously on recently, pursue pre-K, additional classroom, and an additional school resource officer, which would be a ask through the town. So those are the two things I would say we'd be looking to do. I will say that I'm very thankful. So I'll start with pre-K. I'm very thankful that the Board of Finance at their meeting was, very positive and looking forward to it going in our budget and going to the voters. So I'm really thankful for that and for their cooperation and in regard to us pursuing pre-K in this budget season, as well as the town and the Board of Selectmen, Mr. Tierney, I think also Margaret Barra, in regard to the SRO, the additional SRO. They were really tried to do what they could with the ARPA money now, which I appreciate, which alleviates some of the budget cost of that. And then they said they would look toward adding another police officer to help out with the schools. So I'm really thankful for their cooperation. So I look forward to those two things. So those are probably the two things we would mention that might be in our budget, which I don't think will be a surprise to either board. In regard to the Board of Finance our non-lapsing account request for our additional special education costs, they didn't vote on it yet. They did ask for a legal opinion, which I did read, and it was positive for the board to be able to access those funds. So really what I need the Board of Finance to do, or we need the Board of, we need as a board, the Board of Finance to do is just take action on it and say, these funds are available for this purpose, or for this year for you if you need them. Now, that doesn't mean we need to take that money right now out of the account, but as time goes on and our costs, if we start getting close to going in the red, which we are projecting, then we would be able to access those funds. But I really just need the vote there, or we do, so we know, because if they don't vote on it and take action, then it's our responsibility to look at how we would make up those projected losses, and that whether that be a freeze and or cuts. So that's why, maybe I will just reach out to them, but I'm hoping that they vote on it soon, so that at least we know it's accessible and we don't have to do that. So I'm feeling confident that will happen now that they have their legal opinion, so I'm not too worried about that. I will say the Board of Selectmen accepted Diana Morales' and Amanda Veneziano's resignations at their meeting last week. So the countdown, if you will, the 45 days where people have the ability to write in and say that they're interested in being on the Board of Ed started. So we will see what happens. I mean, they are the ones by charter who decide right now who goes on the board. So anyone who's interested that might be listening, you are happy to write in to our selectmen to let them know that you're interested. And I think that's all I have for the chair's report. All right, on to committee updates. And I will forward you, did everyone get the link for the board of, our joint meeting?
It was in, so I sent
Did
the
you forward
packet
it?
that has the link in
Okay,
it.
all right. Because if we could all attend, that'd be great.
Would people prefer like a calendar invite with the link just in it? Would that be
Does it
helpful?
help you? Yes, please.
Clarify.
Thank you. Yeah, it is helpful. All right, policy committee. So this, all these policies and the consortium bylaws. Our second read, I know last meeting was first read, and then I asked anyone to reach out if they had any questions on them. I could go through them, but I didn't hear from anyone, so if nobody has one that they specifically have a question on, I'd like to just vote as a block.
Oh, sorry, I have a question.
Okay,
I feel bad.
that's okay.
So for the policy for equitable identification of gifted and talented students, was this a new policy? I'm trying to remember the history of this one. So what was kind of the
I gotta go to it.
backstory of this one,
Give me
6003?
1 second.
You want me to speak to that?
Oh, yeah, sure.
Thanks.
Just
So-
finding it.
So yes, this was a state mandated new policy that is required. It was required last year, so we're behind a little bit in the adoption of this policy. Our attorneys, which is where we get all of our draft policies for the most part, didn't put it out until, I wanna say May or June, so we just hadn't had time yet to adopt it. Dr. Briere worked on this to Hebronize it a little bit. But yep, it's ready to go, but it is new.
Is it mandated?
It's mandated that we have the
Yeah,
policy.
yeah.
And it's mandated that
I was
under
gonna say, I thought it
law,
was.
you identify gifted and talented. There is no mandate to actually provide any programming. We do.
Oh, I was gonna say, we do
But
already.
Districts are not
So now we just have
required
to,
to.
so you have to identify when you don't have the offer.
That is what the existing law is, yes.
Okay,
Kinda odd.
that
Just
sounds good.
That's kind of where I was going, okay.
Is there any other questions on any other policies? If not, I will make a motion and name all these.
Yep.
All right. So I will make a motion to accept the revised and/or new policy 4004, 4005, 6003, bylaw 9004, bylaw 9007, bylaw 9008, bylaw 9009, bylaw 9010, bylaw 9012, bylaw 9017, bylaw 9021, and the Regional 8 Health and Medical Insurance Consortium bylaws. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, motion passed unanimously. Thank you. And thank you for discussing that consortium last time.
Yeah.
That's all you. That's a long one. Oh, I did it all as one.
I think it's all right.
Okay, sorry about that. All right, Resource Management Committee, Chair Joe Margulis.
We did not meet today.
All right, Nikki Matthews, Student Growth, District Advancement Committee, did not meet on anything. Communications and Community Engagement Committee, we did not meet. Negotiations Committee, we have later, and coming up very shortly, proposed for executive session, and then action, depending on that, about the UPSU contract coming up. PTA liaison.
Who's that? So it was Amanda. Did
It
somebody
was
take
Amanda.
that,
I
did
don't
somebody
think-
take that
Yeah, we
over?
don't have
I don't
one.
think we have one. All right, so if somebody's interested in that, please let me know. We could wait until we have the 2 additional board members as well, because, you know, each person should probably be the liaison. School readiness liaison, we did meet. I did go to it, although I was in my car. And really, it was a lot about the calendar, upcoming calendar, and I don't know, Dr. Bear, if you wanna, is there anything really?
We went over the bylaws as we typically do.
It was kind of like a
and
organizational meeting, I felt like.
New sliding scale this year to be used from the OEC, so we talked about that, but
Mm-hmm.
that was really it.
And wellness committee liaison?
Yes, Dr. Beer is gonna offer
Yeah,
the
sure.
update.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Wellness Committee did just meet yesterday afternoon. Talked about this summer's Read and Run Challenge. We had 90 students participate this summer, which was great. That's 15% of our whole student body participating. So we discussed doing that again this coming summer. We reviewed the air quality survey, which will be going out soon across our staff. And the next meeting is not until January 11th.
Thank you. All right. Old business, we have none. Is there any new business or anything anyone wants to see on new business coming up? We also just passed that policy that has the update, so if there's like 2/3 of people that want to have something on the agenda that you think about in a week from now, you can also let me know. So that'll be helpful too. Sometimes things come up. All right. So next is discussion regarding the collective bargaining for the proposed 2022-2025 United Public Services Employee Union UPSU Hebron Board of Ed non-certified employees contract. So I would just ask for a motion to move into executive session at 8:24 p.m. for the purposes of discussing the proposed contract, UPSU contract, inviting Superintendent Dr. Baird to attend portions of the executive session.
So moved.
Joe Martinez moved. Is there a second? Second. All in favor?
Aye.
All right, and it's unanimous, so we're now in executive session. We can go to room 3.
Who
All right, so I declare us back in open session at 9 PM. I would like to ask for a motion to approve the 2022-2025 United Public Services Employees Union UPSU Hebron Board of Ed non-certified employees contract.
So moved.
So is there a second?
Second.
Ally seconds. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, abstentions. So motion passes unanimously. Thank you very much.
What time did we come back out?
9 o'clock on the dot. Board member comments. Any board member comments? All right. So I don't have to take a motion, but I will take a motion to adjourn at 9:01 PM.
So moved.
Second.
Alex seconds. Any discussion? Everyone wants to stay? All right. All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Motion passes unanimously. We are adjourned.
It's pretty good for